Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tarnished Bronze. Patrick, what do we have to look at today?
Today is Keith Giffen's brainchild, Invasion, the
Invasion.
DC miniseries.
Not to be confused with Inferno, which I think is happening at the same time. Invasion is Keith Giffen's DC universe. So we've had the John Byrne reboot post-Crisis. I think he's left now and he's back at Marvel. And Keith Giffen has been given the keys to DC, and he is running what will become the Justice League International. He's doing his own art stuff. He's got some mini series in the works and so on. And he is just kind of the head of DC right now, basically.
And has he,
He's 5 years
where,
later. He's about to be
I
doing
was
five
just going
years
to
later.
ask, I
Yep.
couldn't remember what year that started though. A little late after this. This is 88.
Yeah, so next in the calendar year 1989, he will be doing 5 years later. But right
Okay.
now, he is still the main Legion penciler on the from about issue 50 onwards.
Yes.
So 50 through to the Magic Wars, Keith Giffen is doing a lot of stuff. So here is the Alien Alliance. And is this Crisis adjacent, Patrick? Would you call this a DC Crisis event or not quite?
Uh, I mean, it's only three issues, but they're big issues. It's a lot to read. It doesn't have the impact of Crisis. One thing that I did after I reread it, was go back and kind of get the main points of what they were trying to establish. So there are obvious editorial goals that they were trying to reach through this, that were probably agreed upon with Mr. Giffen. And those were achieved. But in terms of the cast of characters and the scale, I would say a little bit less. It's more alien based, right? So
Okay.
I feel like they're cleaning up their alien, and establishing their alien species and planets, that seem to be a big part of it, whereas that wasn't really as much in Crisis. Crisis was more of a cleanup of characters, I feel like, in general, and that didn't feel as much pertinent. So in a way, it is, because I feel like, it's a big editorial move, where, okay, we're going to tell a story. It's going to be a grand epic, but we have some end goalposts that we need to meet, based on who's taking over what book, etc.
So I think this is a cosmic crisis. We're cleaning up the
There you go. Okay, that's fair.
cosmic aspects of the DC universe. We will have Legion, which stars Lobo and is it Vidar, a Typhon
Vril
maniac.
Vril Docs.
Vril Docs. Vril Docs will be the sort of current DC universe team, which is going to be called Legion with all the dots in it. And that will be Legion 89, 90, 91, and so on and so forth, starring the main man, Lobo, which is, I think, at the very trail end of these this kind of issue, a few of these spin-offs. So the Doom Patrol is relaunched. Steve Lytle will start the artwork on that, and then it will hand over to a young whippersnapper called Eric Larson, who'll go on to do some other things. Legion will happen. The Blasters will happen, which is probably the biggest news from Invasion. Patrick, you know all about the Blasters.
I've read this a long time ago. I had forgotten they existed, and I have no was were they ever seen again? I have no idea.
Well, you heard it here first. Tarnished Bronze, the world's only blasters expert, can almost definitively say that no, nothing appeared out of this. Um,
Legion was great. Like you said, Doom Patrol completely rebooted for Grant Morrison, and maybe most importantly, maybe the concept of the metahuman,
oh, yeah.
was put into words and introduced to the DC universe. They are very careful. I do not think they use mutant or any form of the word mutant, but we're calling it, the metagene, and that these humans have a gene in them that allows them to enable them to develop superpowers when they're faced with certain death. So think Flash, when his chemicals are hit by the lightning bolt, his metagene kicks into action and gives him a superpower instead of him dying. So this is the DC version of the mutant. sort of.
Yeah, and all that radiation that those Marvel characters are exposed to, the gamma rays. So
Oh, there you go.
this is like a combination of
Yeah, yeah.
mutants and gamma rays. And so Patrick, this is made by Keith Giffen, Bill Mantlo, and Todd McFarlane, and a host of inkers. What's your first Keith Giffen writer or
Would
artist?
have had to have been Legion. Yeah.
Legion, and that is a hell of a choice.
Oh yeah. I think he was already writing for Legion when he did some of his own stuff, which I know eventually. Oh no, because I haven't not read it and written notes on it yet, so I know it's to come. But his Legion of Substitute Heroes special, I
Hmm.
had that straight off the rack.
Oh, okay.
So
Wow.
that was my maybe my first introduction to him as a complete artist, right? Where he's doing the writing and also the art. Because he has a very specific writing style. I think a sense of humor. He always brings the sort of comic relief and the kind of wry, sort of cutting, sardonic comments and whatnot. I was more sort of experienced with him as an artist, only with other people writing like Levitz. But I had seen a few here and there. I'm not a big Ambush Bug fan, but I did like him in Substitute Heroes special.
Okay. So he's a bit of an auteur. He draws his own stuff. He got to the stage where he could do his own work, and here he's unleashed on the DC Cosmic Universe. Bill Mantlo, I know from some early Hulk issues, but I think he
Hmm.
tragically dies pretty soon after this. This might be his last gig, and I think he's doing it because he's gone to law school and he's looking just
I
to
don't
get
know
a
that.
check. So good on Bill Mantlo for broadening his horizons, but just going back to the first, Keith Giffen's first for me for his writing is the immortal Justice League International Annual
Mhm.
4, which is the Justice League Antarctica. It still is one of my favorite comics. Love it to death. And my first art, though, for Keith Giffen is OMAC from the New
Oh,
52, where
hmm.
he's doing a real sort of Jack Kirby kind of riff. And Keith Giffen gets a lot of kind of gets a lot of flack for doing pastiches of other people's styles, but when you're this good, you can pastiche with a little bit of heart. And so I loved that OMAC, and then I went back and got all of his earlier work too.
You know what? He's also, I mean, I'm a big fan. I like his writing. Not as universally as I like his art. I mean, sometimes with the writing, it can get a little bit too kitschy for me, just sometimes. But love his art. Now he's almost like a Picasso or someone who he has his periods, right? So this is what I would call maybe classic Giffen, or maybe even the second stage of classic Giffen for me. And what I like in art, this is his pinnacle for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I have said before to you that I feel like 5 years later is a little bit messy for me. I feel like it's a little troll face and people kind of look a little bit alike.
Leave the
Now
hate
he
for the
went through,
comments, people.
sorry. I mean, I love him. I really do. And rest in peace, because a very big loss for the artistic world for sure, in the comic book world. Um, but then I feel like he had that third period where he returned to the Legion, and I guess it is Kirby-esque. I love that style, and it's messy in its own way, but I mean love it absolutely, almost as much as I like this what I would call classic Giffen. Yeah, I mean I'm a big fan. The some of the 5 years later it gets a little messy for me.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I think he's good at tone. So I mean, he's
Hmm.
got the playful tone for Ambush Bug, whether it's to your taste or not is your prerogative. He's got his George Perez kind of space opera tone that he can use. And then he's got this grim and gritty tone that he does an Image series, which is kind of like a his own grim and gritty comic. He has it all as well as the laughs. And getting into Image series is this features Todd McFarlane on art. Now he's a big part of the reason I like comics, and we're indirectly doing this podcast, Patrick. So are you an Image head, and or is this your first McFarlane at the time when you're picking this up?
Yeah, probably my first exposure, and I don't really know much about Image Comics. No. I was very much just DC Marvel because of how I procured my comic books. It was, yeah, I didn't really get very many independent comics.
And not for the first time, Patrick, the traditionalist
Yes,
comes
always.
comes out. So my first McFarlane comic is actually a backup in the Coyote series, which I think is Englehart and Rogers sort of doing their own thing for the Epic line. And I didn't realize it was Todd McFarlane until hindsight when I was picking up secondhand Todd McFarlane Spider-Man issues in 94 and 95, say, and I look into my own back issues and I like thought I'd found the gold mine that was gonna send me to, riches beyond my wildest imagination by finding this Coyote issue that has a Todd McFarlane backup story. But I digress. This is maybe his last DC work. He's doing all 80 pages this month. He has Incredible Hulk on the shelf as well. And one of the Spider-Man issues, I think, is being drawn for down the pike, but drawn this month. So this is a month where Todd McFarlane's house payments are just getting a bit of a boost, I think, because this is 80 pages, no ads. He's got Incredible Hulk, that's 100 pages, plus a couple of covers. This is a Bart Sears cover, but plus getting ahead of the Spider-Man issues that'll come down the line. And I absolutely adore, we'll get into the artwork here. The artwork really holds up. Because I think he's got this Keith Giffen sort of plotting and timing and making sure we hit all the plot points. It doesn't get too sort of Image Comics pin-uppy. It keeps pretty traditional, even though the layouts are shaken up quite a bit. So let's get into this. We've got the villains on the front. These are the Dominators, and their big circle. If you have a big circle, you're a big Dominator, and if you only have a little pinpoint circle, then you're a little junior Dominator. So
Caste system.
okay, yeah. So that's plenty not to like besides the claws and the teeth and the lack of lips. So yeah,
I
what
love their design. I will also say I think Keith Giffen might be my favorite world builder. I mean, he completely revolutionized the Legion in terms of building what the future looks like for DC. And yeah, and like you said, McFarlane takes that torch and does really well with it.
so speaking of humor in comics, that's always a good visual gag. McFarlane is a good cartoonist, and Giffen lets him shine with this. And I love they're all wearing the same boots, they're all wearing the same stuff. We've got an international cast here in the yellow suits, and then we have some, for reasons that escape me, a child soldier. Just, a good visual gag. And I'm not sure who's going to be responsible for that. I'd probably say Giffen is at least half responsible. But the cartooning of McFarlane as opposed to the draftsmanship, I kind of like this. And we're straight into the story, Patrick.
Yeah, the Dominators have joined with the Coons, and they're experimenting on these humans. They're putting them in what's called the blaster field, where they're going to face. It's like the danger room, except on crack, and all these people are going to be put under severe uh, danger, and
Yeah.
most we're expecting most of them to be killed, and maybe one will survive. But they're actually shocked to find out that seven actually survive, and that's because their metagene is activated, giving them powers. And this is a shock because they expected a much lower percentage. And this just means that the Earth is even more of a danger than they thought beforehand because the humans have such a potential for adaptation and mutation that they didn't realize before. Which, if I remember correctly, that is a bit of a steal from Marvel because that's one of the reasons why the Kree are threatened by the Earth because the Kree sort of can't evolve at this time. I don't know if this has been retconned, but the Kree had sort of reached their evolutionary endpoint, and they could see that the Earthlings had not, and so that was a danger to them.
Okay. And so we see here that there's some of the trials and tribulations, and there's some great shorthand. If you're drawing 80 pages, you've got to take as many shortcuts as you can but those silhouettes in the middle ground in the top, they sell it to me. They look
Oh
really
yeah.
good.
Better than if it was detail for me. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's I think that's what people don't appreciate about, you get the Mr. Potato Head Todd McFarlane stuff, but you also get this visual design alongside the coloring, which is exquisite in this issue. And then we also have this kind of Image Comics inked panel border in the bottom too, which it's got all things to all people, this. I think this is a nice halfway house of having that restraint from Keith Giffen laying these issues out and like saying, hey, you can go nuts, but go nuts within these parameters. You get this blend of classic and kind of highly stylized, and it really does sell it. This 80 pages is a it's a long read. They're all very long reads, but this at least is complete. I think the other issues will get impacted, and we'll talk about it later, by the 40 odd issues of tie-ins. But this one does a lot of setup. It tells a
A lot of
story.
recaps.
There's some
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful art. So we have that tech, and this is a hell of a shot. This top-down UN of the Dominators with the different sort of alien races here. Like they all look visually different. You can see that these people are different to these, and so on and so forth. Just some really stunning world building stuff that goes unnoticed unless you're looking for it. And I think Keith Giffen is very good at that. Like I have to
Mhm.
agree, Patrick. Like if we're setting up, we've got a new status quo after Crisis. John Byrne has left in, a hate-filled, acrimonious departure from the Superman books. And Keith Giffen is there going, hey, we've got this cosmic, unexplored area of the DC universe. Let's bring it into the Justice League and so on. And let's spin off some new books. And I think, to be fair, they're laying this groundwork. They're getting all of those races together for a reason. They're going to invade Earth. They're going to carve it all up themselves. They're going to dominate these upstart humans. Really good setup issue. And is this Adam Strange?
Yes, he's
Yeah.
been captured. He's in the gulag, and he meets Garen Beck, who will eventually be in the Legion, Legion book, which was a favorite of mine too. I think it's great. Aside from, I don't know if I think previously. So aside from the gulag scene, which we see here with the cocoons, that's also very, very cool.
Yeah, yeah.
They also run down sort of the other groups, right? So we've got, like you said, Adam Strange, and I think is it Ran or Ron? I never know. I think it's Ran. Should look that up. Sorry. Um, anyway, Rand is dealt with as a foreign planet. He sort of sacrifices himself and gives himself up to the Dominators to save his planet. Daxam is one of the planets. They say that they're just going to stay neutral and observe. And Apocalypse says that they just demand that Earth not be destroyed because Darkseid has his own plans for the future for Earth. The Thanagarians support, they're so warlike that they actually team up with the Dominion, not as a full partner, but as sort of helpers. And
They've
then
still
we
got all
also,
their harness gear though, right?
yes,
Okay.
they're still going full leather daddy. And then also we have to have a rundown of the Green Lanterns, right? Because they're
Oh,
also
yeah.
they're one of the sort of cosmic groups. Apparently, I didn't realize this, and I can't remember why, to be honest. But I guess only four Green Lanterns have working rings. So the Dominion goes after the powerless ones and kills most, if not all of them, mercilessly. So we're kind of, like I said, we're starting with a clean slate. We're explaining where everybody is, all the alien races that are part of the alliance, the alien alliance, and the ones that maybe are tangential to it as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, the introductions for each of the aliens is pretty good. There's some good visual motifs. The stout, stocky ones. The obviously humans, but with some sort of different technology ones, like the Rand Thanagarians with their flight harness or whatever. Kind of going through the list, and then I think is it the Durlans or the Daxams? They're both in Legion, right? The
Both.
yeah,
Durla is they're shapeshifters.
yeah,
So that's
yeah,
Chameleon Boy. They destroyed their planet with I think I can't remember the exact number, but like it's called the 3 minute war or something that completely irradiated their entire planet and I guess turned them into shapeshifters, uh, say centuries ago. And then Daxam is of course a Krypton esque planet where Monel is from. Of course, at this point, he's not Monel. He's Valor because we've rewritten the Superman connection to the Legion. It's a long story. If you know, you know. So yes, those are both Legion worlds. Now, making up the Alien Alliance, we have the Citadel, Okara. Okara, I think, is the planet that Starfire from the Teen
oh,
Titan
okay,
is
yeah.
either. I think they fight them. Maybe they're their enemies. Oh, it's hard for me to remember. Is she from the Citadel? I don't. One of those two has a connection to her. I can't remember. Durla is a member. The Coons, who are big Legion foes. The Scions are a reptilian. Honestly, can't remember where they come from. And the Gildishpan are the ones that are
Yeah.
floating around in the little bubbles of methane, and they're also from the Legion. So they're
Tell us.
one of them is a Legion foe. So.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah, I
the
have to check about the Citadel. I feel like maybe no. Okay, what is Starfire? She's what's her race?
I don't
Orange.
know. There's got to be a Teen Titans fan
I need
who
to
can
check
alert
that.
us. Yeah. So
Camaranian.
okay, yeah.
I did not look. I just remembered. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that they fight the Okara, and which leaves the Citadel. If I could see them, then maybe I could figure it out. But so anyway, those are the members of the Alien Alliance, and like you said, they all look different. They all have different sort of technologies or things. The Dominators are more sort of delivery, and the Coons are the killers, and we've got people who are specializing in technology, et cetera, et cetera.
You've got all your bases covered for, the military invasion of a planet, it seems. It seems like this is going to be the end for the Omega Men. I'm not sure how far their comic book has gone here, but it looks like they're going to be toast pretty soon. So I know that that's a series that Keith Giffen started. It looks like he'll be around for the end. Um, so there's a lot of things coming up. We also get some of the backstory on the Dominion, which is kind of cool because it's cool to have a point of view character who's actually the villain. Um,
Yeah,
and
it's different.
and you can help explain the caste system and all this stuff that's going on in their home world by having this point of view character. I quite like that. I think that the guy's mission isn't necessarily to be nasty. He just wants to get the bigger red spot so that then he can, move up the food chain in his society, which seems like a fair enough goal. And that is that mutagen, is that metagene rather, the meta gene, is that going to come to bite some of these heroes in the ass later on, Patrick? Is foreshadowing the key to good writing?
Oh yeah, for sure. And when you have what is it, 240 pages, you've got plenty of time for that. So yeah, there's a lot of foreshadowing of exactly what we're headed towards. But there are actually a few good twists in this story, which I actually really appreciated. Um, One thing that I will note, my favorite thing about the Dominion, I guess, is that they had a sister planet that was exactly like their planet, and they're so warlike that they destroyed the sister planet. And so every time you see their home world, there's a rain of meteorites that is the remnants of their sister planet, and just a reminder of how dastardly they are and villains. I mean, the Dominators are about as bad as it gets in DC. So we also learn that an alliance of warlike alien cultures is probably built on shaky ground, and we're already getting the sense that the Dominators have more in plan than they're sharing with their allies. So
Yeah, dastardly. They're underlining that characteristic fairly strongly, and we're leaning into some tropes. So we've got these nasty scientists are trying to craft some stuff too, right? These Dominator the Dominator low caste people are the researchers. And beware the disgruntled researcher. I think is that, the lizard comes to mind, Scarecrow, all these villains. Like you don't want to leave them just Dr. Octopus. You don't want to leave them just chilling out in their labs.
they're like it's weird because the Dominators are not physically imposing. That's why they have the Coons. That's why they've enlisted other people. But the way it's explained is that they're sort of into logistics. So, but the logistics of war and revenge and killing, instead of sort of the lower caste, like you said, the researchers, they're kind of like the nerds who are in the labs and kind of see the big picture. That's one of the recurring tropes in this is that
Yeah.
the Dominator who actually kind of sees the big picture is a researcher, as you said, and he knows that the other ones are so focused and fixated on what the Dominator culture is always fixated on that they won't be able to step back and see the big picture and see that he actually supports that too, but just coming at it from a different angle. So
Yeah, no, it's there's quite a lot in it. There is some good world building. This story for being 80 pages is relatively snappy, to be honest. We get a lot of scene changes. We get some great sort of visuals here. You know, we get to show off it's a science fiction story. You don't need to be focused on building perspectives and so on. You can go a little bit crazy, and I think that that helps with the speed of the read in this issue. It flows pretty well. And, you know, I'm only aware of Adam Strange from just some tangential stuff. I think he travels through time and his wife is in the future, right? And they have a kid. Is that
space,
space? Okay.
space. I don't know if it's time, but there's a zeta beam. So I guess his future father-in-law accidentally shoots him with the Zeta beam and he disappears from Earth and appears on Ron. And then he has his adventures there. So he eventually meets his wife and finds out that I guess I don't actually know this. This is just things I've picked up over the years. I don't have a single Adam Strange comic, but learns that it's his father-in-law. So he kind of bounces back and forth between the two planets via Zeta beam. And I get the impression that he doesn't have complete control of it over it, or maybe it can only be used once every amount of time, something like that. So
Yeah, I know he doesn't have control over it. My only real exposure is in this and in some issues of Swamp Thing, where it gets Swamp Thing into the cosmos by hooking up with Adam Strange. These are really good issues. So, excuse me. So we've got all the setup done. There's a lot of imprisonment of various agitators. What is the main sort of climax of the Dominators in this issue, Patrick? Where do they pick on these people? And I think this top panel here, had to be drawn upside down because I don't know
Mm.
that you could draw something upside down without
And
it
then
going
turned
wrong.
it. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Good
But yeah,
call.
the Dominators have got a few different places in their sights. They've got South America, but they
Um,
decide to go to for this unpopulated island, which seems very strange.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, first of all, their first demand is that the Earth turn over to save itself, that the Earth turn over all of their superheroes, right? So the United Nations vote and they say that they're not going to surrender their superheroes.
Oh, the
Excuse me.
ultimatum. Yeah, that's right.
That's the ultimatum because they know that they can't trust them anyway. What they're gonna do is basically surrender their superheroes and then they'll immediately go back on their word. Now, I think what you're referring to is I think it's the second book. Most of the second book takes place in the homeland on
Uh,
the sparsely populated island slash continent of Australia, which was all the rage. I don't know if you're aware of this because you probably arrived a little bit too late to take advantage of it, but the United States had a classic and well-known obsession with all things Australian in the 80s,
I
which
think
I
Crocodile
benefited from.
Dundee.
And not just that, dude, I'm not kidding at all. It was crazy. Australian stuff was everywhere. I benefited from it and noticed it because, as you know, my family on my mom's side is from Australia, and it was one of the things that made me feel the most special in the world. Growing up poor in Appalachia was my grandmother is Australian, and and look at these books that my cousin sent me, and I have a stuffed kangaroo, and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, Australia was very. If you Google it, you'll see there was a weird obsession with Australia in the 80s. I don't know if it came from Australia and it was a tourist board kind of push,
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah,
and we
yeah.
just fell for it. It was
Yeah.
like the precursor or the advanced guard of Rupert Murdoch, maybe.
All
Uh,
of the above can be true,
it,
Patrick.
it, it
And
may be.
yeah,
But
when
I
at
think it's
work.
funny. I think you know what? Now that I say this, I feel like Keith Giffen might have some connection to Australia too. Maybe I should check that, but could he have been married to an Australian or I don't, because there's a lot of Australian coded things, right? We have the Tasmanian. Now, I don't want to get into the second issue, I guess, too soon, but we've got a lot of stuff coming down the pike for that.
Yeah, it's very bizarre and not outlandishly inaccurate, the things that they do, although some of the geography is correct, but the timing of how long it would take for things to do is kind of strange. There
Way
are a
off.
lot of resources there, so I could understand why someone would want to use that to extract some materials and so on, but it's so far from everywhere. That's why I'm always like, this is a peculiar place, although it doesn't have the nuclear umbrella or whatever. So I can understand it being a defendable plot position that this is what we are, that this is what we're going to do. And the Dominators, they do look nasty. They do look like they could dominate any region that they so choose. The UN decided, no, we're not going to give you our heroes, and so
And that's how the first issue ends. It's kind of a cliffhanger of, well, what's next? Because now we have the heroes on one side, we're not giving them up, and the Dominators have said we're going to destroy the Earth if you don't do this. So, dun dun dun. What's next?
yeah, and there's some just off-color jokes. There's some, there's Australia doesn't have those French and American nuclear submarines yet. So yeah, we're gonna be vulnerable. Um, is Maxwell Lord like I actually thought the Justice League International came after this, but if Maxwell Lord is around, is he in the original Justice League of America as well?
No, I don't think so. You always say annual four, right, of JLI.
Yeah, that's
I
down the
actually
pike.
started
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually started collecting Justice League International from the first issue, right? The
Yeah.
famous cover of them kind of glaring at
The
the at
Bwahaha.
yeah, and I think his introduction is as JLI initially first started, let's say the first few
Yeah.
issues. At least as far as I know. I don't think that he was an established character before that. So I'm pretty sure that's where he got his start.
So that's what I was thinking too, Patrick, that he was around at the start of JLI and not before. So this is actually sort of parallel with JLI. So is Justice League International going to be one of the 45 tie-in issues that we have to read, or are we just going to keep going from here?
I've put the tie-in issues that are advertised on, I guess they're on the back of the book because there are no ads, right? So, or is it on the inside cover? Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
on the back inside cover. And I looked at those covers. I don't have a single one in any of the three books. I
So
didn't read any
I'm
of the
going to
side.
say this, Patrick. I don't have a single tie-in. I loved this issue. If I had have bought this at the time, I would have read it, reread it. There's so much in here. It's like a who's who of the DC universe. Really, really great. I think we're going to be let down in issues 2 and 3 just because of the volume of tie-in sideline stories. But we are not going to be let down by the art, which will have Keith Giffen doing the last two chapters. So that is one thing we will not be let down by. So stay tuned, everyone. Our next episode is going to be the thing that you never knew that you always wanted. Todd McFarlane and Keith Giffen teaming up on art to do part two of this sci-fi magnum opus Invasion. Or is it?